So good day! In this video, we're going to talk about the Hofstede cultural dimension. So it is a framework used to understand the differences in culture across countries. Hofstede initial 6 key dimension includes power distance index, individualism versus collectivism, masculinity versus femininity, uncertainty avoidance index, long versus short-term orientation, and indulgence versus restraint. So first, let's talk about the power distance index of Japan and Philippines. So to define power distance, it is the extent to which the less powerful member of institution and organization within the country expect and accept the power is distributed unequally. Those from high power distant countries tend to accept the notion that everybody and everyone has a set place in the hierarchy and that people in power are earned respect by virtue of their position. So here's the countries comparison. As you can see, the power distance score of Japan is 54 and the Philippines is 94. So let's talk about how they are different. Japan is on the verge of being a hierarchical society with an intermediate score of 54. Yes, Japanese people are always aware of their social hierarchy and behave appropriately. It is less hierarchical than the majority of other Asian cultures, nevertheless. Due to their painfully slow decision-making process in business, some foreigners perceive Japan as being excessively hierarchical. All choices must be approved by each tier of the hierarchy before being approved by the management in Tokyo. So in Japan, power distance is already established during one's childhood. In large power distance societies, children are treated with much love and care, but are also expected to obey their parents unquestioningly and to always show respect for one's elders regardless of one's own age. Now let's talk about our country. The Philippines has a hierarchical society of 94. This indicates that the society accepts a hierarchical structure where everyone has a position and which doesn't require an extra justification. The ideal boss is a benevolent tyrant. Centralization is common, employees expect to be told what to do, and hierarchy in an organization is perceived as reflecting underlying inequalities. In a culture with high power distance such as the Philippines, there's a general belief that power should be concentrated at higher levels and that power provides social order.
When it comes to the individualism, Japan and Philippines are recognized as collectivist country. Japan scores 46 on the individualism dimension. Certainly, Japanese society shows many of the characteristics of a collectivistic society, such as putting harmony of group above the expression of individual opinions, and people have a strong sense of shame for losing face. However, it is not as collectivistic as most of her Asian neighbors. The most popular explanation for this is that the Japanese society does not have extended family system which form a base of more collectivist societies such as China and Korea. Japan has been a paternalistic society and the family name and asset was inherited from father to the eldest son. The younger siblings had to leave home and make their own living with their core families. One seemingly paradoxical example is that Japanese are famous for their loyalty to their companies, while Chinese seems to job hop more easily. However, company loyalty is something which people have chosen for themselves, which is an individualist thing to do. You could say that Japanese in-group is situational. While in more collectivistic culture, people are loyal to their inner group by birth, such as their extended family and their local community. Japanese are experienced as collectivistic by Western standards and experienced as individualist by Asian standards. They are more private and reserved than most other Asians. This really shows that Japanese culture emphasizes being polite and working together as a group. Japan is a collectivist nation, meaning they will always focus on what is good for the group instead of over what is good for the individual. The Philippines Philippines, with a score of 32, is considered a collectivistic society. This is manifest in a close long-term commitment to the member or group, be that a family, extended family, or extended relationships. Loyalty in a collectivistic culture is paramount and override most other societal rules and regulations. The society fosters strong relationship where everyone takes responsibility for fellow members of their group. In collectivist societies, offense lead to shame and loss of face. Employer or employee relationships are perceived in moral terms like a family link. Hiring and promotion decision take account of the employees in group. Management is the management of groups. Philippines focus on we, and one great example is the bayanihan, which you can see in the picture. In all times, they tend to carry one house to put in different place, and this is what bayanihan really means. Whole society or group helping one another.
So now let's move on to masculinity. A high score masculine on this dimension indicates that the society will be driven by competition, achievement, and success, with success being defined by the winner, best in field. A value system that starts in school and continues throughout organizational life. A low score, feminine, on the dimension means that the dominant values in society are caring for others, in one where quality of life is the sign of success and standing out from the crowd is not admirable. The fundamental issue here is what motivates people, wanting to be the best, masculine, or liking what you do, feminine. According to Hofstede Insight, Japan got 95 to its masculinity, where it was deemed as the most masculine societies in the world. On the contrary, in the combination with their mild collectivism, we will not notice how assertive and competitive their individual behavior is, which often associated with their masculine culture. As a matter of fact, there's a severe competition that happens between groups in which masculinity can be seen, and one of the instances of this is from a very young age. Kindergarten or children learn of having a competitive behavior, which is to compete on sports day for their groups. In particular, their groups are diverse into traditionally red teams against white teams. And when we enter the field of corporate in Japan, there is also an expression of masculinity that will show. As we notice, employees are most motivated when there's a fight against their competitors, which can be driven for excellence and perfection when it comes to material production, material service, and presentation in every aspect in life. It should be noted that notorious workaholism is another expression of their masculinity, and for this reason, it is still hard for every woman to climb up the corporate ladder in Japan due to the fact that their masculine norms is too hard and they need a long working hours. On the other hand, the Philippines scores 64 on this dimension and is thus a masculine society. In masculine countries, people live in order to work. Managers are expected to be decisive and assertive. The emphasis is on equity, competition, and performance, and the conflict are resolved by fighting them out.
The dimension uncertainty avoidance has to do with the way that a society deals with the fact that the future can never be known. Should we try to control the future or just let it happen? This ambiguity brings with it anxiety, and different cultures have learned to deal with this anxiety in different ways. The extent to which members of a culture feel threatened by ambiguous or unknown situations and have created beliefs and institutions that try to avoid this is reflected in the score on uncertainty avoidance. At 92, Japan is one of the most uncertainty-avoiding countries on Earth. This is often attributed to the fact that Japan is constantly threatened by natural disasters from earthquakes, tsunamis, typhoons to volcanic eruptions. Under these circumstances, Japanese learn to prepare themselves for any uncertain situations. This goes not only for the emergency plan and precaution for sudden natural disasters, but also for every other aspect of society. So you could say that in Japan, anything you do is prescribed for maximum predictability. From cradle to grave, life is highly ritualized and you have a lot of ceremonies. For example, there is opening and closing ceremonies of every school years, which are conducted almost exactly the same way everywhere in Japan. At weddings, funerals, and other important social events, what people wear and how should people behave are prescribed in great detail in etiquette books. So, school teachers and public servants are reluctant to do things without precedence. In corporate Japan, a lot of time and effort to put the feasibility studies and all the risk factors must be worked out before any project can start. Managers ask for all detailed facts and figures before taking any decisions. This highly need for uncertainty avoidance is one of the reasons why changes are so difficult to realize in Japan. Meanwhile, the Philippines scores 44 on these dimensions and thus has a low preference for avoiding uncertainty. One of the Filipinos' attitude is the bahala na or leaving everything to God. Filipinos do not say bahala na as first options. We say bahala na when we have done everything we could do and the future remains uncertain. We calculated the risk and it does not seem to be in our favor, but we will proceed because much is at stake. For example, many of our OFWs decided to work abroad because they have families to support and the future of their family may change. They are not sure about their lives in other countries, but for the sake of their loved ones, they let go of their peers and let God do the rest for them. You can appreciate this even more if you consider the Filipino beliefs that says, nasa Diyos ang awa, nasa tao ang gawa. God helps those who help themselves. Bahala na attitude is an expression of one's courage and faith in God. We Filipinos embrace uncertainties because we care about our future.
Long-term orientation. These dimensions explain how cultures prioritize these two existential aims differently while still having to maintain some linkages to their history as they face present-day and future-day issues. Normative societies which score low on this dimension. For instance, favor upholding long-standing customs and standards while being worried to societal change. On the other side, those who have high-scoring cultures adopt a more practical approach. They promote conservatism and investments in contemporary education as means of preparing for the future. Long-term orientation is Japan. According to Hofstede Insight, Japan scores 88 as one of the most long-term oriented societies. Through a long history of mankind, the Japanese see their life as a very brief moment. Plus, the idea of mighty God also does not exist in Japanese culture. Besides, they also have these principles which is just do your best in your life and make more money so your children and the next generation would not suffer. Philippines have a very low score of 27 because Philippines are more normative than pragmatic. People in such societies have a strong concern with establishing the absolute truth. They are normative in their thinking and they exhibit great respect for traditions, a relatively small propensity to save for the future, and Philippines focus on achieving quick results.
One challenge that confronts humanity now and in the past is the degree to which small children are socialized. Without socialization, we do not become human. This dimension is defined as the extent to which people try to control their desires and impulses based on the way they were raised. Relatively weak control is called indulgence, and relatively strong control is called restraint. Cultures can, therefore, be described as indulgent or restrained. Now, if we're going to look into the graph, Japan and Philippines with a low score of 42 are shown to have a culture of restraint. They are prone to pessimism and cynicism. In addition, in contrast to indulgent societies, restrained societies place less emphasis on leisure time and exercise greater control over the fulfillment of their desires. People with their orientation believe that social norms limit their actions and that indulging themselves wrong. Now, if we're going to compare the different practices of the two countries, in the Philippines, close friends hug and kisses, or in Tagalog, beso-beso, when they greet one another, while close male friends may hug each other and tap their backs or just by a handshake. We smile and wave at other people whenever we greet them. In greeting our elders here in the Philippines, we usually lay our forehead in the back of the hand of our elders to show respect. It is also used when parents arrive home to show respect. Unlike in Japan, bowing in Japan, known as ohichi, is an important etiquette that is learned from a young age. Depending on the situation, a bow can be a small nod of the head or a deep bend at the waist. A deep, long bow indicates respect, and a smaller nod is usually less formal. Therefore, we come to the conclusion that Japan and the Philippines have their own unique culture and traditional beliefs that made them a country. They both continue their culture, thus preserving them and keeping them alive. We must always remember our own culture when we visit our countries, and we also need to respect the country's culture to avoid unnecessary conflict that may arise or to keep ourselves from embarrassment. Remember the things that you've learned and apply them in your life.